Today I want to continue with the theme that I addressed yesterday, and that is how the mainstream white monopoly capitalist funded media continues to control the narrative in South Africa and attack those who they believe are not part of their plan for the future South Africa, or who they believe are a danger to the continuation of white monopoly capitalist control over the South African economy. The last few days we had a prime example of how this works. A book that had been written by a certain young journalist of not much distinction, a certain Mr. Pieter-Louis Myburgh, called Gangster State, and which constituted a large range of unsubstantiated and rather vicious allegations against the Secretary General of the African National Congress, comrade Ace Magashule. That book, which was funded by the Taco Kuiper Foundation, which is being managed and chaired by the Caxton Chair for Journalism at the University of the Witwatersrand, Professor Anton Harber, was now given the award as the so-called Best Investigative Journalist Publication of the Year. No surprises. The same people who funded the writing of the book and who, in Pieter-Louis Myburgh's own words, provided him with a very handsome grant so that he had the space and the opportunity to write his piece of journalistic haggism, then proceeded to give him the award that he had written the best investigative journalist book for this year. Well, I heard of self-congratulatory behavior, but this takes the cake. As we say in Afrikaans, die een krap die ander se rug. The one scratches the other's back. In this instance, the scratcher, in both cases of making it possible for this piece of journalistic propaganda to be written and then to award it with a prize, turned out to be the same. The Taco Kuiper Foundation and the man behind it all, Professor Anton Harber. Now we can see how this overlap of conflicts of interest proceeds in order to serve the white monopoly capitalist conglomerate in South Africa, and specifically those who are in charge of our economy. As I look at this, I cannot help but to remind myself that it is also the Wits Department of Journalism who has been contracted by Facebook to assist them with judging what is so-called appropriate postings on Facebook and which should be removed and which participants or members on Facebook should be suspended for their particular posts. So here we go. Wits Department of Journalism, together with the institute closely associated with it through the professorship of Anton Harber, decides on what kind of grants are given for which journalists to write what kind of books in order to attack specific persons who is deemed to be worthy of being attacked, I believe mainly because they pose a challenge to the economic interests of white monopoly capitalists in South Africa. At the same time then, Facebook gets the same Department of Journalism and the same Professor Anton Harber to assist them with deciding what is appropriate on Facebook or not. This is a very strange cyclical process which has only one particular intention, and that is to continue to promote, in the South African context, mainstream journalism that will serve the interests of the existing capitalists and those who are in control of our economy. As Noam Chomsky indicated, the more you get journalism being at the mercy and in the pay of the big capitalist interests, the more you will get a creation of an environment in which the truth will certainly die, and in which people will be led by their noses, by the front pages of journalism and of journals, which are intended only to create a fake and false outrage against those who are truly trying to bring fundamental political and economic change to our society. I find it extraordinary that a terribly poor journalist of junior ability, not only in terms of his years of experience, but also in terms of the manner in which he wrote that terrible piece of propaganda called Gangster State, then must proceed not only to be funded to write it by the Taco Kuiper Institute, but also at the same time then must receive a prize from the Taco Kuiper Foundation. And of course, we cannot miss the irony of Professor Anton Harper being a professor funded by the Caxton Publication Group. The Caxton Publication Group of a certain Mr. Terry Moorman, who have had over the years shown a strong interest in manipulating the news in South Africa in the interest of the Democratic Party, the Progressive Federal Party, and those so-called liberal interests against the interests of the majority liberation movement, such as the African National Congress. The plot thickens, but one thing is certain: we will not get the truth from this unholy pot of lentil soup which they are dishing up to us in the attempt to get us to sell our most basic rights and to prevent us from proceeding with full liberation in South Africa. Until tomorrow, goodbye.